His wife said, "I can't stand him anymore." So he vanished. What he left behind made her collapse. "I can't stand him anymore. I wish Griffin would just vanish so I could be with Roland forever." Those were the words Jenna Ward whispered to her friend over the phone, not knowing her devoted husband of 15 years was standing in the doorway recording every cruel syllable. She had no idea that the quiet furniture maker she'd been mocking was about to grant her wish in the most devastating way possible. What happened next will make you question everything you think you know about loyalty, betrayal, and the price of taking someone's love for granted. Viewers, what will you do if you heard your spouse wishing you'd disappear forever? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Sit back, grab your popcorn, and let's dive into this story of betrayal and revenge. Griffin Ward's hands still smelled like pine wood and varnish when he quietly pushed open the front door of his Boise home that Tuesday afternoon. The furniture delivery to the Morrison family had been canceled last minute. Their check bounced, so he'd come home 3 hours early. He expected to find Jenna in the kitchen preparing dinner, maybe humming along to that jazz playlist she loved. Instead, he heard her voice carrying through the house, sharp and animated in a way he hadn't heard in months. "Sarah, I'm telling you, I can't stand him anymore." Jenna's voice cut through the silence like broken glass. Griffin froze in the entryway. Those 6 words hit him like a punch to the gut. His calloused fingers immediately found his phone, pressing record without hesitation. Something in her tone told him he needed to capture whatever came next. "Even the way he breathes irritates me," she continued, and Griffin could hear her pacing in the kitchen. 15 years I've wasted with that man. What do I have to show for it? This modest little house and that old truck he still uses to deliver furniture. No kids. Nothing. The cruelty in her voice made Griffin's chest tighten. No kids. Because of her fertility problems, not his. Yet he'd stood by her through every failed treatment, every negative test, every tear-soaked night when she blamed herself. "He always puts me first like a puppy," she sneered, and Griffin heard her laugh, actually laugh at his devotion. "But my heart, it's with Roland now. He treats me like the queen I am." Griffin's hand trembled holding the phone. Roland Nash, the pharmaceutical rep who'd been coming around their neighborhood, always friendly, always charming. Griffin had never suspected. "I wish Griffin would just vanish, you know." Jenna's voice turned dreamy, wistful. "Just disappear so I could be with Roland forever. No messy divorce, no splitting assets, no explanations to anyone. Just gone. Like he never existed." Each word was a knife twisting in Griffin's heart. The woman he'd loved unconditionally despite her inability to give him children was fantasizing about his disappearance. Griffin closed his eyes. For 15 years, he'd held her through the shame and pain of infertility. He'd researched specialists, suggested adoption, reassured her that she was enough. And she was discussing him like he was an obstacle to remove. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like if Griffin just packed up that old truck and drove away forever. Left me free to start over with someone who actually appreciates what I have to offer. Griffin heard her sigh contentedly, like she was savoring the fantasy of his absence. That's when something crystallized in Griffin's mind. The man who'd spent 15 years being the devoted husband realized his wife had just given him the perfect blueprint. She wanted him to vanish? Fine. He'd give her exactly what she wished for. After Jenna hung up, Griffin waited a full minute before making noise at the front door, jingling keys, stomping his boots, calling out his usual, "Honey, I'm home." He walked into the kitchen with a smile, kissing her cheek like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. For the next 3 weeks, Griffin Ward became the husband Jenna had always claimed to want. He brought her morning coffee with extra cream, left sweet notes in her yoga bag, kissed her goodbye every morning like a man deeply in love. But behind his gentle smile, Griffin was orchestrating the most devastating revenge in modern relationship history. While Jenna texted Roland during her yoga classes, Griffin made strategic phone calls. His first call went to his brother Brent in Colorado, a successful realtor who specialized in discreet, high-value property transactions. "I need the house sold fast, cash only, No public listings, Griffin told him. Can you handle it quietly? Brent didn't ask questions. The Ward brothers had always protected each other. The second call went to Eli Jacobs in Montana, Griffin's old high school friend who'd become one of the state's most ruthless divorce attorneys. Eli's reputation for destroying cheating spouses in court was legendary. I've got audio evidence, Griffin said simply. How fast can we move? With what you're describing, 2 weeks, maybe less. She won't know what hit her. Griffin's third move was pure genius. He started photographing every piece of furniture in their home, pieces he'd crafted with his own hands over 15 years. Every custom cabinet, every hand-carved table, every built-in bookshelf, all of it legally his intellectual property and craftsmanship. Meanwhile, Jenna floated through their house like a woman already free. She hummed while cooking dinner, smiled more, even initiated intimacy for the first time in months, though Griffin now knew she was probably thinking about Roland. She had no idea her devoted husband was photographing serial numbers on appliances, documenting every asset, and transferring money into a separate account his attorney had established. You seem happier lately, she mentioned one evening, curled against him on the couch he'd built from reclaimed oak. Just grateful for what we have, Griffin replied, stroking her hair. Inside, he was calculating how many days until everything would be finalized. Jenna interpreted his calmness as resignation. She grew bolder with Roland, staying out later for yoga workshops and wellness retreats that didn't exist. She even started bringing Roland's gifts home, expensive perfume, silk scarves, jewelry that Griffin's income could never afford. My yoga instructor gave this to all the advanced students, she'd lie, showing off a diamond bracelet that probably cost more than Griffin made in 3 months. Griffin would smile and tell her how beautiful she looked. Then he'd photograph the gift and add it to the evidence file Eli was building. The house sale moved faster than expected. Brent found a cash buyer, a young tech executive from Seattle, who wanted a move-in ready property for his new Boise job. No inspections needed, no contingencies, just clean money for a clean transaction. Within 18 days, Griffin had perfected every plan, while Jenna remained completely oblivious. The closing was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon while she'd be at her regular yoga session. Everything was falling perfectly into place. Thursday morning arrived gray and drizzling. Griffin sat on the couch looking at the house for the last time while Jenna showered upstairs, humming that same tune she'd been singing for weeks. The irony wasn't lost on him. She was preparing for yoga class, the same class where she'd probably text Roland about their weekend plans, while Griffin prepared to grant her deepest wish. I'll be late tonight, she called from their bedroom. Advanced workshop runs until 9. Be safe, honey, Griffin replied, his voice steady as granite. At exactly 10:47 a.m., Griffin signed the final closing documents. The house, every beam, every floorboard, every custom detail he'd poured his soul into, officially belonged to strangers. The cash deposit hit his new account within minutes. By noon, he'd loaded his pickup with 15 years of memories condensed into 12 boxes. Tools, photo albums, his grandfather's woodworking set. Nothing that screamed abandonment, just the essentials a man might take for a weekend trip. Griffin's final act was placing a manila envelope on the kitchen island, where Jenna always dropped her keys. Inside, divorce papers signed and notarized, the flash drive containing her recorded confession, and a single handwritten note. You said you can't stand me anymore and wished I would vanish. Consider your wish granted. Griffin. At 2:15 p.m., Griffin Ward drove his aging Dodge pickup out of Boise for the last time. No dramatic exit, no fanfare, just a quiet man disappearing exactly as his wife had fantasized. Meanwhile, Jenna spent her afternoon texting Roland between yoga poses. Can't wait for this weekend. Griffin seems so distant lately. Maybe he's finally getting the hint, Roland replied. Some men just know when they've been replaced by someone better. If only they knew Griffin was already 200 miles north, heading toward his new life in Missoula, Montana. Jenna returned home at 7:30 p.m., keys jingling as she entered through the front door. The house felt different, quieter somehow, but she was too distracted by Roland's text to notice. She microwaved leftover takeout and scrolled through her phone, planning lies for Griffin about where she'd been. It wasn't until she went to grab a bottle of water that she saw the envelope. Her name was written across it in Griffin's careful handwriting, the same script that had penned hundreds of love notes over the years. She opened it casually, expecting maybe an apology for his recent moodiness or another one of his sentimental gestures. The divorce papers hit her like a physical slap. Her hands shook as she read the note. Then she saw the flash drive. She had no idea of what was on it before she even plugged it into her laptop. Her own voice filled the kitchen, cruel, calculating, fantasizing about Griffin's disappearance. "I can't stand him anymore." The recording played her betrayal back in perfect, damning detail. That's when someone knocked on the front door. Jenna's legs nearly buckled as the knocking grew more insistent. Her mind raced. Was it Griffin returning? Had he changed his mind? She yanked open the door to find two well-dressed strangers holding clipboards and legal documents. "Mrs. Ward, I'm Michael Smith, and this is my wife, Sarah Smith. We're the new owners of this property. We've completed closing and need you to vacate within 24 hours per the purchase agreement." The words hit her like a freight train. "What are you talking about? This is my house." Sarah handed her a thick folder. "Ma'am, your husband sold the property some hours ago. Here's the bill of sale, deed transfer, and court documentation. Everything was legally finalized this morning." Jenna's hands trembled as she flipped through the papers. Griffin's signature was on every page. Notarized. Official. Final. He'd sold their home, the home she'd lived in for 15 years, without saying a word. "There must be some mistake," she whispered, but the legal documents were ironclad. Griffin had owned the property solely before their marriage. Nevada law was clear. It remained his separate property. "We're sorry for the inconvenience," Michael said gently, "but we have movers coming tomorrow." The door closed, leaving Jenna alone in a house that was no longer hers. Panic set in. She called her sister Rebecca in Portland. "Becca, I need somewhere to stay. Griffin's lost his mind and—" "Jenna, I can't. David's mother is visiting for 3 weeks. We don't have room." Click. She tried her friend Sarah from yoga class. "Sarah, remember our conversation about Griffin? Well, Actually, Jenna, I'm not comfortable getting involved in marital drama. Good luck, though." Another dead end. Fighting hysteria, she dialed Roland. Her escape plan, her future, the man who treated her like a queen. "Roland, something terrible has happened. Griffin found out about us somehow, and I need—" His voice was ice cold, professional, distant. "Jenna, I can't help you. My wife and kids will be back from Connecticut tomorrow. This thing between us, it was just a relationship of convenience, nothing more." "But you said you loved me. You said—" "I said what you needed to hear. Look, you're a beautiful woman, but I'm not leaving my family. I never was." The line went dead. Jenna dropped the phone, the full magnitude of her situation crashing over her like a tsunami. Roland had used her. Her sister wouldn't help her. Her friends had abandoned her. Griffin had systematically destroyed her entire support system while she'd been texting her married lover and fantasizing about her husband's disappearance. She collapsed onto the kitchen floor, the same kitchen where she'd mockingly wished Griffin would vanish forever. Her wish had come true. But instead of freedom with Roland, she was left with nothing. No husband, no home, no lover, no friends, no family support. Just 24 hours to figure out how to rebuild a life she'd carelessly thrown away. While Jenna sat broken on her kitchen floor, Griffin Ward was 400 miles away in Missoula, Montana, sleeping peacefully for the first time in months. He'd rented a small cabin on the outskirts of town, nothing fancy, just clean walls and honest silence. No yoga mats cluttering the hallway, no expensive perfumes that weren't gifts from him, no lies disguised as love. The morning after Jenna's world collapsed, Griffin stood in his new workshop space, a converted garage behind his rental cabin. Sunlight streamed through dusty windows as he unpacked his grandfather's hand tools, each piece carrying decades of honest craftsmanship. His phone had been buzzing all night with calls from unknown numbers. Jenna, probably using another phone to reach him. He'd blocked her number the day he left Boise. Griffin didn't answer. He had nothing left to say to the woman who'd wished for his disappearance. Within a week, word spread through Missoula about the quiet furniture maker who'd arrived from Boise. His first commission came from a local restaurant owner who needed custom tables that could withstand heavy use. "You built all this yourself?" the owner asked, running his hands over Griffin's sample pieces. "Every joint, every finish," Griffin replied simply. The man handed him a deposit check for twice what Griffin usually charged. "When can you start?" For the first time in months, Griffin smiled genuinely. His old life in Boise felt like a movie he'd watched about someone else. The man who'd tiptoed around his wife's moods, who'd apologized for breathing too loudly, who'd accepted crumbs of affection while she feasted elsewhere, that man was gone. This Griffin charged what his work was worth. 8 meals without analyzing every bite for signs of his wife's irritation. Slept without wondering if the woman beside him was fantasizing about another man. Meanwhile, Jenna's social media had gone silent. Her yoga blog hadn't been updated in weeks. Friends who'd once commented on her posts about mindful living and gratitude practices now scrolled past her profiles without engagement. Griffin knew this because his lawyer Eli kept him updated on public information. "She's staying in some extended stay motel," Eli reported during their weekly call. "Picking up substitute teaching jobs. Her Instagram following has dropped 60%. "Any contact attempts?" Griffin asked, sanding a piece of cherry wood that would become a dining table for a young couple's first home. Her lawyer tried to contest the house sale, claims emotional distress and abandonment. "Won't hold up. We have the recording." Griffin nodded. The same recording where she'd wished he would vanish so she could be with Roland forever. She'd gotten exactly what she asked for. The difference was, Griffin hadn't just disappeared from her life. He'd disappeared into a better version of himself, one that wasn't built around someone else's lies. In Missoula, Griffin Ward wasn't anyone's devoted fool. He was simply a craftsman who knew his worth. 2 years later, Jenna sat in a cramped studio apartment that smelled of bleach and broken dreams, staring at the picture of Griffin. Her yoga classes were long gone. Her wellness blog sat abandoned. Roland had blocked her number after she'd made the mistake of calling him at work, begging him to leave his wife. The woman who'd once mocked her husband's devotion now understood its true value. Griffin hadn't just loved her. He'd been her foundation, her safety net, her unwavering support through 8 years of fertility struggles she'd blamed him for behind his back. Meanwhile, in Missoula, Griffin's workshop had become legendary among Montana's custom furniture circles. The quiet craftsman who charged premium prices and delivered perfection had a 6-month waiting list. He'd started dating a local librarian named Claire, a widow who appreciated handwritten notes and morning coffee, who understood that real love was built through daily kindnesses, not grand gestures. Claire knew about Griffin's past. She'd listened without judgment as he explained why he'd left, why he sometimes grew quiet when certain songs played on the radio. "Do you miss her?" Claire asked one evening as they watched sunset paint the Montana sky. Griffin considered the question honestly. "I miss who I thought she was. But that woman never existed." He'd learned the most powerful lesson of his life. Sometimes the greatest act of self-love is walking away from someone who doesn't value what you offer. Jenna had wanted him to vanish so she could be with Roland forever. Instead, Griffin had vanished into a life where he was valued, respected, and genuinely loved. The recording that destroyed their marriage had taught him something profound. Jenna hadn't just betrayed their marriage. She'd never appreciated the man who'd stood by her through infertility, who'd built their home with his own hands, who'd loved her unconditionally when she couldn't love herself. Griffin's revenge hadn't been about punishment. It had been about freedom, hers and his. She was finally free to pursue the sophisticated life she'd always claimed to want without the burden of a devoted husband. He was free to build a life with someone who understood that loyalty, craftsmanship, and quiet strength were treasures, not weaknesses. The most devastating part of Griffin's plan wasn't the financial ruin or the social isolation he'd left Jenna to face. It was the slow realization that she'd thrown away the one man who'd loved her completely, flaws and all. Some lessons come through punishment. Others come through loss. Jenna learned that the love of a good man, once lost, can never be reclaimed. Griffin learned that the most powerful revenge isn't destroying someone who wronged you. It's becoming the version of yourself they'll never have access to again. If you are Griffin, would you have done the same? Or do you think he overdo it? Drop your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more interesting and true-to-life stories.